Welcome back to The Look and Sound of Leadership, an ongoing series of executive coaching tips designed to help you be perceived in the workplace the way you want to be perceived. I'm Tom Henschel, your executive coach, and today we're talking about how to deepen relationships at work. Grace's performance reviews showed high marks for projects and processes. Her skills with people, however, scored quite low. During our first coaching conversation, talking about what she wanted from the coaching, she said, "I'd like to learn how to be likable. I've always been the smart one, the unflappable one, but I've never been that good with people. And in this company, I see it. Relationships are currency. My balance is pretty low." I asked, "When you say you were always the smart one, how far back are you talking?" "My parents were scientists," she said. "They made me feel smart since I was a little girl, which was great for problem solving and thinking things out, but not so great for making friends. I was the school nerd." I didn't speak. She said, "It's been bothering me with my one-on-ones. I always schedule at least 30 minutes on my calendar, but we rarely use it all. They sit down, we go through our lists, they get up, they leave. We talk about work, but after that, I don't have much to say. I know that's why I get those low scores. I just don't know what to do differently." I asked, "Well, if you wanted to talk about something that wasn't about work, what would you ask them?" "I don't know. Ask about their family? I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm not sure I know who's married and who isn't. I always feel that's intrusive and personal." I asked, "Did it feel intrusive and personal when I asked you how far back you've been the smart one?" "No, but that's different," she said. "Different how?" "Well, isn't that why you're here? You're supposed to ask that stuff." I laughed. "The intrusive and personal stuff?" She laughed too. "No, I didn't mean that. I mean, don't you need to get to know me as part of your job?" "Well, it helps, for sure," I said. "And I think you're saying the same thing. Deepening relationships with people is important to you, too. You say that's what you want for yourself." She shook her head. "I just feel so bad at it. But yes, I do want to learn. So let me ask you what you asked me. When you want to deepen a relationship, what do you do?" I thought a second and then said, "Two things come to mind. I match, that's first, and then I'm curious. I ask a lot of questions, that's second." "You match?" she asked. "What are you matching?" "Any number of things," I said. "For a start, I want to know if our purposes match. Are we defining success the same way? If so, if our purposes match, that's one way to deepen our relationship." She said, "Well, I hope my direct reports have the same purpose for doing their work as I do." Ooh, hearing myself say that? Well, that's probably ridiculous. Why would they? Huh. "What else do you match?" "The other person," I said. For a long time now, I find myself matching all sorts of things with people. Breathing, rate of speech, their whole energy level. Matching's pretty automatic for me these days. "Do you do it with me?" she asked. I nodded. "Like I say, it's pretty automatic, so yeah, I do." "I can't tell you're doing it," she said. What do you think about it?" I asked. "I'm wondering if I'm being manipulated. I don't think I am, but that would be my answer if I were being manipulated, so I'm not sure." "You're not sure if you feel manipulated," I echoed. "I don't think I do. I like you," she said. "Well, I'm glad," I said. "And I would like to suggest that one part of the reason you like me is because I'm calibrated to match you. And the reason I don't think it's manipulative is because I'm not trying to gain advantage. I'm not tilting the field in my favor. I'm deepening the relationship. To me, that is not manipulative." She laughed as if a riddle had revealed itself. And then she asked, "So you're matching what in me? My rate of speech? That's one thing you mentioned." "Partly, yes. More your whole energy." She considered that, then asked, "What else could I match?" I said, "The conversation. Are you both actually having the same conversation?" An example of a conversation that isn't matched would be, at the end of a long day, two partners talking. One wants to talk about their day and all the twists and turns, and the other partner wants to fix everything they hear. Those two conversations don't match, and it does not deepen the relationship. She laughed. In my husband's family, we have a joke about the goodbye conversation. One of his sisters, she'll say that thing, okay, like, I'm ready to go now, and we all say goodbye. And we go back to what we were doing. And she stays there talking, having her own little goodbye conversation. But we are all talking about something completely different. We laugh about the fact that her goodbye conversations are their own part of the get-together. I said, well, so you get this concept. People might be talking back and forth with each other, but not having the same conversations. Being sure you match the other person's conversation is another way to deepen the relationship. Well, not in my one-on-ones, she said. We're matching our conversations there. We're matching a work conversation. But matching doesn't deepen those relationships, at least not according to my performance reviews. Good point, I said. What might? As if remembering something she should have known, she said, oh, okay, well, here we go again. Okay, I don't need to be just having a work conversation. I need to have what would you call it, a people conversation. Is that what's missing? I nodded, saying, there's a book called Super Communicators. And the author, Charles Duhigg, talks about this idea of matching conversations. He calls the work conversations practical, and the people conversations, the ones you were thinking about, he calls those emotional. She had a flash of horror. Well, that doesn't sound attractive at all. Why? I asked. What are you picturing? Emotions, she said. Emotions can make me uncomfortable. Even just talking about them, I asked. The way Duhigg explains it, the emotional conversation may be about emotions, but it's not emotional. She gave a little huff of despair, which I think we have established is not an arrow in my quiver. I said, I wonder if it would be easier if, instead of thinking about feelings, if you thought about being curious. That was your second thing, after matching, right? She asked. Whoa, yes, good listening. Yes, the two things I do to deepen a relationship are match and be curious. And I wonder if being curious will get you to the same place by a different route. And what place am I trying to get to exactly? She asked. The emotional conversation, I said. The conversation where people talk about not just what happened, but how they feel about what happened. They talk about their experience. That's the conversation we're trying to get to, because that conversation deepens relationships. She said, I don't know. I see why it would deepen the relationship, but I don't want to sound stupid, but I am not certain how I would even start that conversation without sounding like I'm interrogating someone. Really? If you were just being curious about something, I asked. What would that sound like? She asked. I said, invite someone to say more about something. I did it with you when I asked what else you might talk about with people. I invited you to say more. She looked at me. That was coaching, wasn't it? Well, I suppose so. What did you think of it? I liked it. It made me self-conscious, but I didn't mind it. I nodded. Well, I'm glad. It's a particular kind of question. It's a category called deep questions, and they're great for deepening relationships. She asked, am I right? They're coaching questions? I nodded, I suppose, but not just coaching questions. Lots of professions use deep questions to get people to talk about their beliefs and their values and their aspirations. If you can be genuinely curious about how someone is experiencing their life, most likely you will ask a deep question, and the relationship will deepen. She smiled. I'd like to be able to do that. I want to learn this. Exploring different ways to deepen relationships became Grace's passion project. Her first attempts at matching felt awkward, but then, one day, it happened easily, and that encouraged her. Even though her progress felt slow, she felt that deepening relationships at work moved her towards the look and sound of leadership. This episode suggested two ways that you can deepen relationships. One way, matching. The other way, curious. In this part of the show, I want to talk about each and flesh them out a little bit, give you some new ideas. And then at the end, I want to address that idea that I talked about matching someone's energy. What does that really mean? I want to talk about that. So I have two ideas about matching. The first one is a subset of matching conversations. So you remember I said that there were three ways to match someone. You could match purpose, you could match their energy, or you could match their conversation. I want to be sure that when you hear the idea of matching conversation, that it doesn't sound passive. I think a lot of the time we imagine that matching the conversation means matching whatever the other person is talking about. They're telling you about yesterday's staff meeting, and you match them by asking a deep question about their experience. You keep them talking. You follow their lead. You match their conversation. And that's great. Good matching. That will deepen the relationship. And you have agency. You do not have to follow their lead. Sometimes you can deepen the relationship by directing the conversation. So suppose one of your direct reports is telling you about a conversation they had with a colleague. It's important, but you have a short window and you want to talk about the Mexico City project. It is okay to say, I hear how important this is to you, but right now I want to be sure we have time to talk about the Mexico City project. You acknowledge what you hear, and then you redirect. It's not passively matching whatever they're talking about, and it does deepen the relationship. Here's my second idea about matching. So, you can match purpose, you can match energy, you can match conversations. Now I'm going to add a fourth one. Match vulnerability. One way to deepen relationships is to match vulnerability. So imagine a direct report comes to you and they tell you a family member of theirs just got a terminal diagnosis and the life in their family is going to change. You can deepen the relationship in moments like that, moments when the worlds shift, by focusing on the other person and matching their level of vulnerability. How intense are their emotions? Can you allow those emotions to happen without being embarrassed, without jumping in to make them better? Can you focus on them? Do you know how they are? Do you sense they want to keep talking? Can you keep them talking? Match their vulnerability. Sometimes matching their vulnerability means sharing a story of your own. I think it's a great way to match vulnerability if you can match. But I just want to urge you, it's not really your turn. It's really their turn. So if you're going to tell a story, tell it lightly and get the ball back to them. Also, if you're going to tell a story, you want to think about matching intensity. If they talk about a family member dying and you reply with a story that's trivial by comparison, you have not matched intensity and it does not deepen the relationship. Same if you reply with a story that's horrific by comparison. That's not matching intensity either. Matching intensity will help you match vulnerability, and that can deepen the relationship. So 2 ideas here about matching. Lead the conversation, match vulnerability. Okay, curiosity, deep questions. Let me start by asking you to imagine something. Picture yourself talking with your boss. It's the end of the day. You're not in a hurry. Things are quiet. In that moment, can you imagine asking your boss a deep question? A question that would invite your boss to talk about their beliefs or their values or their aspirations. Can you picture yourself asking your boss a question like that? Whether you answered yes or no, and I think it could go either way, I'm guessing that it was a pretty easy call. It was pretty easy for you to know which circle of vulnerability your boss was going to live in. And there's that word vulnerability again, right? I don't think it's surprising when we're talking about deepening relationships that we also talk about vulnerability. My point here is you knew where your boss went. Because I think we all have concentric circles of vulnerability. I'm going to be more vulnerable with the people inside this circle that's closest to me, and I'm going to be less vulnerable with the people in that circle that's farther out. And Those circles are completely appropriate, completely healthy. Now think about the people at your work. If you want to deepen your relationship with one of them, one way to do that is to bring them into your next circle of vulnerability. And one way to do that is with deep questions. Deep questions pull people into your next circle of vulnerability. It deepens the relationship. So could you ask your boss a deep question? Your direct reports, your peers? I wonder. And for a second, just flip the perspective. Think about yourself as a leader. Think about your direct reports and how they experience you as their boss. If they heard that question about can they ask their boss a deep question or not, what would they say? Which of their circles of vulnerability are you in? And if you wanted them to pull you into a closer circle of vulnerability, ask them deep questions. Deep questions deepen relationships. So how would you actually ask a deep question? I want to give you 3 tools you can use. Here's first. A deep question has to be open-ended. However, not all open-ended questions are deep. And by the way, quick side note, recently I did an episode called How to Answer Questions Powerfully. There are lots of tools in it for just that, answering questions powerfully. If you want to do a quick refresher on the challenge of open-ended questions, because I think they are a challenge, the link is in the show notes, how to answer questions powerfully. But let's go back. So a deep question has to be open-ended, but just because you ask an open-ended question doesn't mean that you asked a deep one. For example, I might ask an open-ended question to get you to tell us what happened during that client meeting in Atlanta. It's an open-ended question, but it is not a deep question. It's a what happened question. If it had asked for reflection about what happened, then it would be a deep question. So that's number 1. Around asking deep questions, it has to be open-ended. To be sure that your question is deep, use the second tool. Build in reflection. Deep questions ask people to reflect on themselves, reflect on their futures, reflect on what's important to them. Reflective questions invite people to share how they feel about their situation or their experience. And you heard me do it with Grace. She was thinking about being manipulated, and I asked her, what did she think of that? It was a deep question because it asked her to reflect on her experience. And when she and I were talking about being intrusive and personal, right? I asked her, is that how she felt? It was a deep question because I asked her to reflect on her experience. Those are both very small, immediate reflections, but you can ask people to reflect on much bigger parts of their lives. You can ask, what makes you happy? What was a special time in your life? Do you have a philosophy that helps you succeed? They're all deep questions because they are reflective questions. The third way that you can express curiosity and create a deep question, just keep the other person talking. Encourage them to say more. So you say things like, say more about that. Or what else? What are you taking away from that? How are you making sense of that? You distinctly throw the conversational ball into their lap and you step back. And that is the third tool for crafting deep questions. So the first was be open-ended. The second is ask reflective questions and keep them talking. These are all ways to be curious and deepen the relationship. My last idea for this part of the show was to talk about matching someone's energy. Grace and I just used it as a phrase, but never did any definition around it. I want to explain it, and I will right after this month's gratitude. Gratitude this month begins with Dave Stachowiak. I know many of you listen to his show, Coaching for Leaders. Dave has always been a huge supporter of this show. Thank you, Dave. Dave and I have become the loveliest of friends, something I'm very grateful for all the time. Dave had me on his show recently to talk about taking initiative, and it was a treat. We both brought our ideas, and we like talking to each other anyway. It was a great conversation. The link is in the show notes. Dave, thank you. It's always a pleasure being on the air with you. Gratitude also to an episode of Dave's where he had a conversation with Charles Duhigg, who wrote the book Super Communicators. I talked about the book in the episode with Grace. This is a book you should know about if you want to deepen relationships. The subtitle of the book is How to Unlock the Secret Language of Connection. It's all about deepening relationships. There's a link in the show notes to the book and to Dave's conversation, but most of all, I just want to express gratitude for the wisdom and tell you all it's out there. Gratitude this month to new clients. It was a wonderful month. The new year had started out very quiet, and then suddenly floodgates opened. And welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I still have slots available. I'm always grateful to talk with people who want to talk about coaching. Finally, in a very special place in my heart, people who post reviews. Wherever you are in the world, your reviews mean so much. Thank you so much. This month, here in the United States, SMCSR 83, I appreciate what you wrote. And I appreciate the fact that you posted it. Thank you so much. Okay, matching someone's energy. So what does that really mean? To match someone's energy, you want to pay attention to as much of the person as you can, and then match every part of them that you can. When I was working with Grace, I was acutely aware that I was matching her energy because her energy is so strong and so different from mine. And I felt that if I didn't match her energy, it would be an impediment in the coaching. It would not deepen the relationship. When I thought about how did I really do that and explaining it here today, I thought of 3 things that I know that I did, and I thought I could share them, not because they're the only ones to do, but because I hope you'll get an idea of what you might look for and that you could do this yourself. One part of Grace that I matched that was easy for me to do was her speaking rhythm. So I said, Grace is completely literal, right? Her rhythm is really strong. She takes pride in being rational. She takes her words seriously. She speaks in fairly short sentences, and she expresses a lot of ideas. Can you hear it? Her rhythm is so staccato, and that is not my rhythm. But it was easy for me to match it. Matching speaking rhythm is easy for me. Did it. That was matching her energy on one level. Something that was harder for me to do was matching how she expressed her emotions. This was a big part of her energy. When Grace talked about emotions, she could have been talking about a spreadsheet. She was completely stoic. She said things, personal, revealing things like, I was never good with people, or I was the school nerd. And it was like she was reading a fact from a book. That kind of stoicism is hard for me to match because my style is highly expressive. When I hear an emotion, I tend to reflect it on my face. But I knew that that would be an obstacle. Just picture it. If she says something that I think is impactful, but she talks about it in a completely flat way, like it is not impactful, and I react to it, then I'm just way out of sync with her energy, right? This is not going to help deepen the relationship. I was vigilant about this one, and I did okay most of the time, but it was hard for me. And then there was a moment when I completely did not match her energy. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I said before, Grace was literal. Well, I am not. I think in metaphor. I talk in metaphor. They just come out of me. If you listen to the show, I'm sure you've heard them. So one day we're talking, she says something, and I reply with a metaphor. And I and I got to the end and I could see it in her face. She had no idea what I was talking about. And her complete total incomprehension just struck me so funny. I burst out laughing. And then of course she said, "What are you laughing about?" And I explained it. It was all fine. It was great actually, but I never used a metaphor again with her. It was definitely not a good way to match her energy. So there were 3 ways here to match energy. One is you match speaking rhythm. You can match how they express their emotions. You can match their style. Are they concrete? Are they metaphoric? If you want to match someone's energy, Consciously focus on them. Notice them. Let them be a totally separate person and watch them like they're on a screen. Their energy is there for you to see. Focus on them. If this idea of deepening relationships excites you, I hope you will take a look in the show notes. Super Communicators is there, links to the different episodes, the episode about answering questions powerfully. Also, I took all the lists that got built in the show, lists for creating deep questions and ways to match. It's all in the show notes. Please help yourself. There's also links to our library. Our archive is large now. It's divided into categories. This episode is linked in 3 categories: communication skills, relationship building, managing yourself. You could go into any one of those 3 and you're going to find some episodes that I think will interest you. 5 specific episodes you might listen to are building empathy, building listening, because if you're going to ask deep questions, listening will be important, influence, the conflict conversation, and building rapport. That episode has a lot of great matching tools. Plus, it has a story about an exercise I did as a first-year student at the Juilliard School that is about matching. It's weird and it's wonderful. I think you'll like it. Okay, that's it for me. Until next time, I'm Tom Henschel. Thanks so much for listening.